Good afternoon, students. So we're now in week 5. And so in week 5, you just have two things to do. You have your week 5 forum, in which you are going to do a peer review of another student's paper. And then you have your week 5 quiz. Now, if you want to find your week 5 quiz prep, then you could just look at my week 4 instructor session, or you can watch my week 4 instructor session. And all the week 5 quiz prep is located on the home page. This week, I'm going to talk about how you can apply what you learn in this class to what you do at work. And so, what kind of writing would you expect to do if you were to continue your college education as a nurse, or if you were to go on to become a nursing professional professor? So that's what today's lecture is going to be about. I'll go over the different kinds of essays and how you can apply what you learned in this class to your workplace and for your college future. Right now, you're in the very beginning of your college career, and you're writing college papers that other people have written and that you would back up with other people's research. As you continue more in college, you are going to do your own research and come up with your own papers that other people are going to research on. So that's the difference, is that the longer you stay in college, the more original your papers become, the more complex your papers become, the longer your papers become. And so I'm going to go over the different kinds of essays. You can go back to the week 3 interactive lecture to find out the most common different kinds of essays that are written. And so I'm going to go over first the different kinds of essays found in nurse writing. Then I'm going to go over the different kinds of writing found in the nursing profession. That's two different things. So that's why I made two different PowerPoints. So here goes. Let's hope that this thing works. Share my screen. And first I'm going to go over the different kinds of essays. And so here I'm going to go over here, and slideshow from beginning. So different styles of writing for nurses. And so in order to understand this presentation, you need to study my different kinds of essay PowerPoint and my ethos, pathos, logos PowerPoint. All of my videos are found on my Professor H writing channel on YouTube. So the different kinds of essays that you will find in anything that you do. Okay, first I'm going to go over all the different kinds of essays that you can write in any profession. First you have the narrative essay, where you write an essay about your life. I became a nurse because. Then there's a descriptive, illustrative example essay, where you use description as examples for your thesis. Then you have the classification essay, where you write an essay that categorizes the topic into groups. For instance, I would say different kinds of students that go to Fordham College are. Different kinds of fruits that I eat are. So anytime you categorize something into groups, that's a classification essay. It's used a lot in biology. Comparison contrast essay. Now that's the second essay that you're going to be doing in this class. And that's when you compare two ideas, two people, two places that are similar. A process essay. A process essay is an essay that describes a process, such as how to get rich, how to lose weight. And so a thesis statement for a process essay would be, in order to lose weight, step 1, you need to exercise. Step 2, you need a healthy diet. And then step 3, you need to maintain self-discipline in order to keep up with your diet and your exercise. So for instance, that would be a process essay, how to do something. A cause and effect essay is an essay that talks about causes or effects. The causes of the Ukraine war were cause 1, cause 2, cause 3. The effects of the Ukraine war are being blamed on a lot of supply chain shortages, such as the shortage of infant milk, higher gas prices, etc. So that is a cause and effect essay. An argumentative persuasive essay is an essay that convinces the reader of your point of view. In other words, if that's going to be your week 9 forum in which you're going to write an argumentative, persuasive essay post. So when you want to convince someone, you can go to the procon.org website, and they will have all kinds of issues you can write about. For instance, if I wanted to convince you, teachers should have guns in the classroom so that teachers can better protect students from school shooters. That's a very controversial subject. Actually, most teachers disagree with that, but that's an example of an argumentative, persuasive essay where I persuade you my point of view. And also during week 9, I will go over the 3 kinds of persuasive essays that do exist. There's a take a position persuasive essay, there's a call to action persuasive essay, and then there's a problem solution persuasive essay. And I will go over all of that in much more detail in week 9. A definition essay is an essay that defines a concept. What is love? What is freedom? And so if I say love is defined as, and then paragraph 1, self-sacrifice, kindness, thinking of others before yourself, for instance. So those would become your body paragraph. So that's a definition paragraph. An expository essay is all of these essays, actually. It's any essay that informs the reader about a topic. So here are some examples of a narrative essay. So I became a nurse because. A descriptive essay, an example would be, LA is a great place to live because of the great beaches, Santa Monica, the universities, UCLA, and parks. So here you have 3 different examples of why LA is a great place to live. And you'll notice that even though I said that this is a descriptive, illustrative essay, it's also a persuasive essay because I'm trying to persuade you my point of view that LA is a great place to live. So yes, the different kinds of essays do overlap. Classification essay. So an example of that would be dental, HVAC, and nursing students attend Fortis College. Then paragraph 2 would talk about dental students. Paragraph 3 would talk about HVAC students. And paragraph 4 would talk about nursing students. Comparison contrast essay. So this is what I'm going to go over in a lot more detail in weeks 8, especially in week 8. I'll go over the transition words. So that's when you write a comparison contrast essay, you are comparing just 2 things. So this is a common topic that students like to write about. Childhood is better than adulthood because during childhood you have no jobs, no responsibilities, and no bills. And a process essay is describing a process, how to. So to succeed in nursing school, you need maturity, determination, and strength. And then of course, the cause and effect, the causes of COVID-19 or the effects of COVID-19. Argumentative. COVID-19 is more serious than the average flu because of the high mortality rate, the high transmission rate, and the high hospitalization rate. So that would be argumentative. Definition essay. Love can be defined as sacrifice, selflessness, and kindness. And so in nursing, you can have descriptive writing similar to an illustrative example essay. You're going to have explanatory writing similar to a cause and effect essay. You have analysis writing similar to classification essay. You have argumentative writing similar to an argumentative persuasive essay. You have synthesis writing similar to writing a research paper with many sources. And you have reflection writing similar to writing a capstone paper at the end of your major. So the first one I'm going to go over is descriptive writing. In descriptive writing, you used 5 senses to get the reader to experience what you experience. You want the reader to experience, you want to describe to your reader exactly what you experience by appealing to all 5 senses. So descriptive writing overlaps with explanatory writing in that you are describing the situation of a patient to the family and to the doctor. So using descriptive writing in nursing uses the same techniques as what we did in our week 3 descriptive food game, where you would appeal to all 5 senses. So if I had students in this class, I would then ask students, how do you use description on the job? What do you have to describe when you keep records? In your real life, when do you find it necessary to give descriptive detail to someone? So since there's no students in this class, just think about it. In the explanation style in nursing, the writer provides explanation based on purpose, meaning, or cause and effect nature. As a nurse, you might have to explain the purpose of a patient consent before carrying out any treatment or care, or you might have to explain the meaning of a diagnosis to a patient, or you teach a patient how to take a medication. So an explanation of the causal relationship may be how smoking caused that patient's lung cancer. And a good explanation tells the patient what is going on, so the patient knows what next steps to take. So in this explanation style, you have a mixture of many different kinds of essays, such as descriptive, explanatory, reflective, cause and effect, persuasive, and definition essay are all combined, because in definition essay, you have to define to the patient what exactly is that person's sickness, what he can do about it. So then a process essay would be, how would that person deal with it? How would that person take their treatments and cope with it? So you have a lot of explanation style that interweaves with what you do, so that what we learn in this class does have an impact on what you do. If you're able to come up with clear thesis statements, clear main ideas, then you're able to communicate much more effectively as a professional. So here's an example of the explanatory causal relationship essay. Poorer people and people with pre-existing conditions have less or harder access to affordable health care. So expansion of Medicaid in most states. So here are some ways in which you can fix this. Expansion of Medicaid in most states. Creation of law forbidding insurance from denying people with pre-existing condition insurance. And then the creation of Obamacare, Affordable Health Care Act, and also a desire for Medicare for All movement. So here you have why was and how was Obamacare created? What caused Obamacare to get created? It was because there were poor people who could not afford their medicine, and then they needed a way in which poorer people can then afford medicine by expanding Medicaid. And so hence the creation of Obamacare. So when do you do cause and effect analysis on the job? Can you give me an example of how you use cause and effect analysis to help patients or doctors on the job? And also you would use argumentative style of writing. So we're going to do the argumentative style or persuasive style of writing during the week 9 forum. So in an argument style of writing, you make a claim and you back up that claim with credible sources. And so in order to write an effective argument, you need to have credible sources, and you need to know how to find credible sources. And during my week 10 lecture, I'm going to go over how we find credible sources. But in order to recognize if an argument is valid, you need to have ethos, pathos, and logos. What are ethos, pathos, and logos? So in order for people to believe your argument, you need to have ethos. That's the appeal to credibility. That means that your argument is written by an expert, a scientist, not an actor. Pathos, so that's the first expert, or ethos, that's the first thing. Then pathos, meaning appeal to emotion. So that means you're able to use descriptive writing in order to appeal to the emotion of the reader. Logos. Logos means that you have a logical structure to your essay. That is, you have a thesis statement with matching body paragraphs. So if you're missing any of these appeals, if you're missing ethos, if you're missing pathos, or if you're missing logos, then your argument is no longer valid and your argument turns into a fallacy. A fallacy is an illogical argument. So I'm going to go over in more detail what is a fallacy, what are credible sources, and how to avoid fallacies in your argumentation. So you got to make sure that when you write your persuasive post, you have ethos, pathos, and logos, and you have credible sources. And I'm going to go over all of that in the week 8, 9, and 10 lectures. So come to my, so anyway, getting back to, so when you're in nursing, you're going to find the argument style of writing. Example of an argument style writing in a nursing paper would be, Obamacare is necessary because many people with pre-existing conditions would be denied affordable health care. Poor people, so that would be reason 1. Poor people would not be able to afford health insurance. That's reason 2. And more people would go bankrupt getting expensive medical care. And then paragraph 2 would be, would match. So make sure that when you have your thesis statement, that your body paragraphs match your thesis statement so that you have essay coherence. So here I have people with pre-existing conditions would be denied affordable health care. And so paragraph 2 would be people with pre-existing conditions would be denied affordable health care. And paragraph 3, poor people would not be able to afford health insurance. So paragraph 3 would be, so whatever you write in your thesis statement, that means you have to have matching topic sentences. And then each paragraph has to have 5 to 7 sentences. When do you use argumentation at work? When do you use ethos, pathos, and logos in your real life? And you don't realize that you're surrounded by argumentation. Like every ad or TV ad that you see, they're trying to convince you to buy their product. So argumentation in real life and persuasiveness is pervasive and occurs everywhere. And as soon as you see a TV ad, your brain should kick into automatic motion and you start thinking, ethos. Is this written by an expert? Pathos. Do they have good descriptive language? Logos. Do they have one main idea and thesis statement with matching body paragraphs? If you're missing any of these appeals, then that argument is not valid. So let's say I'm watching a TV commercial and they want me to buy their product, but the TV commercial is not being, the ethos, for instance, is missing because there's no experts, It's just some actor saying that this is a good product. So as soon as you don't have credibility, the ethos for that TV ad, then that argument is out the window. So that's what I mean by if you want to write a good argumentative essay, you have to have ethos, pathos, and logos in your essay. And then another kind of writing that you would find in nursing is analytical style. In an analysis, you take a topic and you break it down into its components. This is very similar to the classification essay, where in a classification essay, you classify your topic into groups or categories. Analysis is the art of taking something apart to examine its constituent parts. If a toddler is given a new toy, he or she will take it apart to see how it works. You do the same with your topic by examining whether the topic presented reflect old ideas or new ideas. You also have to take a topic apart to see if it has ethos, pathos, or logos. Once you see that an argument has all 3 of these, then it is a valid argument. So every time you hear an argument, you should take that argument apart and analyze to yourself, is this or is this not a credible argument? Example of analytical style. Before Obamacare, People with pre-existing conditions were denied health care by major health insurance companies. Thus, these sick people could not get affordable health care. They often went broke just going to see a doctor, seeking treatment, or getting an operation. People who did not have employer insurance also had to pay a lot of money for medical care. When Obamacare expanded Medicaid and passed a law forbidding health care companies to discriminate against people with pre-existing conditions, many people were able to get affordable health care for the first time in their lives. However, for many, expanded Medicaid is not enough. Some want Medicare for all, which would give all Americans quality, affordable health care, regardless of income. And America would have universal health care just like other developed countries like Europe and Asia. Now, that particular point is hotly debated. Some believe that universal health care is a good idea, and others believe it's not a good idea, and that we should keep our private insurance, because some point out that in countries that have universal health care, you have to wait forever for an appointment. You have to wait forever for an operation. And that what makes our healthcare system really effective is the ability for us to get our operations right away. But it's only if you have money. And so that last statement about universal health care is hotly debated. When you write your argumentative essay, it's really good to have a thesis statement that is hotly debated. That is a thesis statement that people can agree or disagree upon, because that makes your essay that much more interesting. So you would want to avoid writing a thesis statement that's just strictly factual. You want to write a thesis statement that it can be debated. And then you use your body paragraphs to justify your point of view. So how do you use analysis on your job? When do you have to place people into groups or categorize topics, issues, or ideas into groups? As a teacher, I categorize my students into audio learners, visual learners, or kinesthetic, hands-on learners. And so that's an example of analysis for a teacher, because every time I get a new class, I have to take a look to see what kind of students do I have. Do I have a bunch of students with advanced writing skills? Or do I have a bunch of students with not so good writing skills? And then I adjust my teaching style to that bunch of students. And I can tell you, after so many years of teaching, every group of students is unique. So evaluation style of writing. So an evaluation style of writing is the result of judging the value or merit of an argument through supportive reasoning. We evaluate things when we compare or contrast one thing, people, or idea is better, worse, or the same as another. So that's what we're going to be doing during Essay 2. We're going to be evaluating what one thing is better than or worse than another. And so most students evaluate or think that childhood is a freer, simpler time than adulthood, because adulthood is filled with responsibilities. In healthcare, evaluation is crucial to make sure if an intervention is successful. So we evaluate. Example of evaluative writing. We evaluate if we wash our hands more often, we can control the spread of COVID-19. However, if we do not wash our hands and we do not social distance, we are more likely to contract COVID-19. It is important for hospital staff to wear PPE, wash hands, use hand gel to stay healthy. Yet many hospital staff forget to wash their hands when they go from one hospital ward to another, especially if they are tired or in a hurry. The constant wearing of PPE and hand hygiene, coupled with social distancing during the COVID pandemic, saves lives. And so evaluative writing is similar to the comparative contrast essay, where we contrast and compare non-hygienic behaviors, which leads to COVID-19, versus hygienic behavior, which prevents the spread of COVID-19. So when we make an evaluative thesis statement for our comparison contrast essay, we are expressing our preference. As we compare and contrast, one thing is better or worse than another. And so for your second essay, we will be doing an evaluative thesis statement. So I will go over the difference between an evaluative thesis statement and a factual thesis statement in my, I don't remember which, in my lectures about the week 8. I think it's about week 8 or week 9. Yeah, something like that. Week 7 and week 8. I will go over more about what is a comparison contrast essay. So that's something to look forward to, right? And so another kind of writing is called synthesis style of writing, which you will do in nursing. While analysis in an argumentative essay involves understanding one viewpoint, synthesis involves understanding multiple perspectives and multiple viewpoints and blending new and old ideas together to form a new perspective and make new connections. Synthesis writing typically involves the old with the new to form something unique and original. This kind of writing usually happens in capstone writing, when the student looks over all the writing he has done in his major to come up with a topic nobody has done or written before. You're going to be doing a lot more synthesis writing as you get to your 3rd or 4th year of college. And the higher up you go in college, the more you're going to do synthesis writing, where you're not going to be simply regurgitating what somebody else has already written. You're going to write about something completely new that hasn't been written before. So you're going to synthesize all of the old ideas. In other words, you're going to read a lot of literature to find out what came before. Then you're going to add your paper. That's how you know if something is new, is by reading everything else that came before. And you have to synthesize in your head, okay, so A, B, and C came before. Now I'm going to add to that stack of information, D, E, and F, something brand new no one has ever thought of before. And so the higher up you go in college, the more you will be obliged to write something brand new. But don't worry about that now. In your first 2 years of college, you're just going to be writing what other people is writing, because right now you're doing foundational knowledge. First, you're still learning the basics of what your field is going to be. And so while you're still in the foundational knowledge stage of your learning, you're not going to do as much synthesis. But synthesis will come later on when you have to write something brand new. So synthesis writing occurs in the advanced levels of your college training, such as being a senior, that is your 4th year of college, or a graduate student, that's the 5th year and 6th year of college, writing his master's or PhD, more like 7 years of college dissertation. And so by the time you get to 7 years of college, you've done a lot of reading and writing of research papers. So then you know your field really well. So here's an example of synthesis writing. As you can see, it looks pretty complex. And another thing you're going to notice is that when we write academic papers in English, we use formal English. We don't say, hey bro, how you doing? Oh, do you dig it? Are you groovy? Okay, so that's the slang from my time period. But basically, when we use formal English, that's English that's timeless. That's the good thing about formal English, is it never gets old, unlike slang, which gets old after a few years. So when we write academic writing, we want to use 3rd person case, he, she, they. We also use passive voice, and we also use a lot of APA in-text citations. And the APA in-text citations go inside the body of the paragraph, and then your references will go outside. So here you also get an example of APA in-text citations. So an APA in-text citation is when we cite medical facts, historical facts, any kind of numerical information in which a researcher had to do a lot of research to come up with that information. If you forget to add your in-text citation, then you are committing plagiarism. Okay, so if you just simply read from a book, 50% of Americans are obese, that you forget to write in where you got that information from, then you are committing plagiarism. Plagiarism means you're stealing other people's information and using it without their permission. And in the real world, this is a different, I'm going to go over all of that in week 10. So let's get back to synthesis. Okay, so in this synthesis, you're going to notice this is formal English with APA. to support the decision-making process on patient care. Evidence-based practice needs to be systematic, both in the quality of data and its detailed examination. And then here you see an example of author and date, because this is a paraphrase quote. A paraphrase quote means that the author summarized the information from another source. And you can tell it's a paraphrase quote because there are no quotation marks and no page number. In this way, evidence-based practice is key to justifying healthcare expenditures. So that he got that from Chapman. And et al. Means that more than 2 or 3 authors. So if you have more than 2 or 3 authors, then you write et al. You don't have to write out all the authors. You write out all of the authors at the end of the paper in the reference list. So when you do your in-text citation, you just write your author and date. That's it. However, barriers to best practice through uninformed clinicians can hinder progress, jeopardizing health outcomes for patients, despite easily accessible systemic reviews in reliable repositories, such as the Cochrane database. This suggests that clinicians could make more use of evidence-based research to inform their decision making. So this is an example of synthesis writing, where this person wrote his paragraph, but he synthesized different parts from different people's research and put it together. Now, at your stage of writing, you just need to write one in-text citation and then write 5 sentences about that in-text citation. So synthesis writing occurs at a much more advanced level of college. So this is kind of like a glimpse into the future. And this is how you're going to write in 4 years, 5 years, 6 years. Okay, so don't worry if you're like, what? I can't write like that. Well, you will. Okay, if you stick to college, this is how you will write. You'll learn how to do formal English, and you'll learn how to paste together little bits of information from other places to form one paragraph. But that takes a lot of practice how to do that. So when you write a research paper, you have to synthesize all the different sources and blend them all together in order to make one coherent paper. And so in your case, you don't need more than 3 or 4 sources at best. And for your essay 2, you only need to have 1 in-text citation and 1 source for your essay 2. So that will be required. And so when you do your week 9 persuasive essay, you may have to read more than 1 source to create credible evidence to convince the reader of your point of view. So start thinking right now, what controversial subject will you choose for your argumentative synthesis persuasive essay post? How do you plan to synthesize all your information into one thesis with reasons? And then the last kind of writing that you're going to find in nursing is reflective writing. Reflective writing uses all of these kinds of writing styles. In other words, reflective writing incorporates all of this, like definition, evaluation, analytical, everything I just went over, all gets put into reflective thinking. When we do reflective writing, so then that means that we think back as to how can I improve my job performance? How can I improve A, B, and C? So reflective is thinking back, and then as you think back, you have to analyze, you have to define, you have to synthesize how you can improve your job. So first, you would, for a nurse, an example of reflective writing would be a description of the event. Who, what, where, when, why. Feelings and thought. So as the event was taking place. So let's say you're doing a patient take-in, and the patient is describing his illness, and you're writing it down. And then as you write it down, you would think to yourself, and you're self-aware, what are you thinking as you're writing it down? Are you aware of your body language? Are you aware of how you're, how you look to the, so that's called being self-aware, okay, feelings and thoughts. So what are you thinking? What are you feeling? And then after after the intake, after you finish intaking the patient, and the patient has left the office, and that's when you do the reflective thinking, and you sit back and you think, okay, how could I have done that better? That's the heart of reflective thinking. You go over how you acted, how you can, just like for me as a teacher, every time I teach a class, I would reflect back and think, how can I teach the next class better? How can I give more effective feedback? How can I be a better teacher? And so that would require reflective thinking. And this reflective thinking usually takes place at the end of an event, so that the next time you do whatever it is, in my case it's teaching, the next time I teach a class or the next semester, I will have reflected. And as I reflect, I use all of the different essay types. So this is the first 30 minutes, which goes over the different kinds of writing, the different essay types that we're going to study in this class and how it affects your workplace. Now in the next PowerPoint, I'm going to go over if you become a nursing teacher, if you decide to go for your master's or your PhD and pursue an academic career in nursing, what kind of writing would you expect to do? So that's what the second half of this lecture is about, is what would you do if you decided, I think I'm going to become a teacher. I'm going to teach nursing to new students. So, or I would become a PhD, or maybe I want to become a nursing administrator. That requires a PhD, so that's like about 8 years. Or I want to be a nurse practitioner. That's the master's. That's 5 to 6 years of college. So if you decide to go to more college, this is the kind of, or pursue an academic career in nursing, this is the kind of writing you are going to have. Let's see if I can share the screen. Yeah, that's it. Share. All right, so I'm going to go to this one, and I'll try to go through this really fast. All right, so what kind of writing would you be doing? So we've already gone over academic, evaluative, reflective, analytical, persuasive, definition. Those are all the most basic kind of writing. And then you're going to incorporate those different kinds of essay writing into the essay writing as you do. So there's some overlap. You're going to notice some similarity. For instance, the clinical reflective writing. Hey, didn't we just talk about reflective writing? Yeah, we did. So you're going to do clinical reflective writing. We just went over that. You're going to do case studies in which you're going to write descriptive writing of different patients, and you're going to use different patients' cases as examples for your topics. You're going to do research critiques. That's when you read a lot of stuff and you critique other people's papers. Literature review means that you've read so many articles that you know how to write an article on that topic that's brand new. And then advocacy writing means that you believe very, very strongly in your cause. So let's say this is similar to the persuasive, argumentative writing. Okay, so this overlaps. Everything overlaps. And so advocacy writing is just like persuasive, in which if you believe in Medicare for all, for instance, therefore you would write an article in the Nurse's Journal saying, as a nurse, I believe that every patient should have the right for Medicare for all. So that's known as advocacy writing, when you advocate a cause. Clinical practice guidelines. So when you become a senior nurse, you and a group of other senior nurses would then create a bunch of guidelines that the junior nurses need to follow in order to have good nursing guidelines and working conditions. Clinical practice articles means that that's like comparison contrast. That's like evaluation. That's definition. That's expository essay, in which you describe, let's say you find a better way to treat a patient. You want to tell everybody, hey, I discovered a better way to bandage this patient that you won't believe your eyes, and you can't wait to tell everybody. Then you write a clinical practice article in which you tell other nurses your discovery, so that other nurses can use your treatment of what you discovered, okay? And then conference presentation. Conference presentations is similar to clinical practice articles, except you would present your articles or your clinical practice articles or your discoveries to a bunch of people, kind of like oral presentation, like public speaking, that sort of thing, in front of a group of people or in front of a conference of medical professionals. So these are the different kinds of clinical, reflective writing, case studies, research critiques, literature review, advocacy writing, clinical practice guidelines, clinical practice articles, and conference presentations. These are the different kinds of academic papers you will write as you pursue an academic career in nursing. And then you're thinking, oh, my professor is an English teacher. What does she know about nursing? What does she know about writing in nursing? Aha! Well, I've got ethos. Remember, every argument has to have ethos, pathos, logos. Ethos means that I've got to have credibility. That means that whatever information I got has to be written by an expert. And obviously, I'm not an expert at nursing. So that's why I read a book called Writing in Nurses, a brief guide by Thomas Long and Cheryl Beck. And so my information came from a bunch of nurses who then tell other nurses, this is the kind of writing you're going to be expecting. And so that Thomas Long and Cheryl Beck are senior nurses. So they're telling the junior nurses, this is what it's like because this is what you're going to be doing if you're going to have an academic career in writing and nursing. And so according to Thomas Long and Cheryl Beck, they discussed that the three components of good writing for nurses includes credibility, which is ethos, care, which is pathos, and competency, logos. Credibility, care, and competency. If you have credibility, care, and competency in your article, so let's say you want to write a nursing article, and that's a thing, you're thinking to yourself, I'm a nurse, why should I write any articles? If you publish articles to a nursing website, it really looks good on your resume. While everybody else has on their resume, I did my experience, nursing job 1, internship 2, another nursing job here, and so on and so forth. People would show their credentials of all the different kinds of nursing jobs they have. You also have, in addition to your experience, your nursing articles. That gives you more kudos and more credibility, and then the employer will stand up at attention going, whoa, this person knows what she's talking about. She's actually written articles. And if you're going to go into teaching, even more so. So that's why it's good to write articles, publish articles, so that you can get ahead of the crowd in terms of your resume. All right, so getting back to the three components of a good writing, any kind of writing, is credibility, care, and competency. Ethos, pathos, logos. And what is the heart of nurse writing? And so as a nurse, you're going to be, right now you're reading all of this scholastic, scholarly articles, right? And then you would be, for instance, let's say a magazine like Time magazine says, asks you, is COVID-19 really that serious? And I don't really know anything about it. Can you explain that to me in plain English? And so what you're going to do is you're going to read all of the medical English that, from your medical field, and then you're going to write it in nice, easy English that anybody, on the street, average person can understand. And so that's one of the ways in which, kind of like what I'm doing for this class, I simplify what I say in understandable English so that something you can digest. And so here, in the heart of nurse writing is you do research, you increase knowledge by investigating a phenomenon and then telling everyone about it in English that everyone can understand. But before you get to that part, you would read everything, and then you try to apply what you learn to the real world. So nurse research is more concerned with implications for real world practice, where the nurse converts the scientific body of knowledge into ways to improve patient health. Long and Beck calls this translational science, using evidence-based practice. That is, converting scientific discoveries into actual clinical practice to improve patient health. So this means that as a nurse, you would read up on all the latest discoveries so that when you are a nurse, you know the latest treatments for your patients. And then if anybody were to ask you to explain what you're doing, whether it be a patient or some reporter, you would be able to explain in easy English what it is. I remember there was a doctor, and he was being interviewed by a reporter. And so he was sitting in a group with other doctors, and then a reporter asked to the doctor, "Oh, is this sickness really serious?" And then the doctor was conferring with the other doctors, and when he was conferring with the other doctors, they were talking in such really like medical language we could not understand. Meanwhile, because the reporter asked a really good question, the doctor wasn't quite sure of the answer, so he wanted to confer with the other doctors, and they talked in totally medical language, and then he spent like almost 2 minutes or 5 minutes doing that. Meanwhile, the journalist got so impatient. I'm still here," said the journalist. Then the doctor turned around and in 1 second said, "Yes, but we have no treatments for this illness yet." That was it, And so he translated whatever it was he was saying in 5 minutes and all that technical ease with all the other doctors to something that easy English that reporter could digest, understand, and report to everybody else. That's known as translational science, because you're translating something difficult into something easier. So, and then you also want to translate all of that body of medical knowledge into what you do at work, and you try to apply what you learn in your medical field to work. I do that all the time with teaching and educational technology articles. And so as a professional, everyone has to take professional development classes to stay up to date in there. That's what all of this is. It's you write. Another one is clinical reflective writing. And so we just went over that in the end of the last PowerPoint, in which you think deeply and critically about clinical practice. So when nurses reflect upon or evaluate how they can better perform their job, then they do a better job. And so this is similar to an evaluation essay, and similar to when a teacher reflects on how she can better teach her class, such as in the end of class surveys, I really do read your suggestions. So don't just say, "Oh, the class sucks." Well, that doesn't really help. How do I know how did it suck? And so you have to give actionable suggestions. Well, your lectures are too long. That's a good actionable suggestion. You should make your lectures shorter. That's how you can improve your class. So we engage in reflective writing so that we can do it better the next time. When have you engaged in reflective practice? Do you have time to step back and think about how you could have done something better for your patients? Another kind of writing is case studies. So in a case study, you use your patient as an example for your topic. So let's say I want to write about how smoking is really bad for your health. Then in order to give a face to the topic, I would say, and here's a case study. Betty had lung cancer. She had a ventilator down her throat. Betty only had a few more days to live, but she wanted to live long enough in order to make the TV cigarette ad in which she tells young people, "Don't be like me with the ventilator down my throat. Don't start smoking." And then a few days after Betty made that commercial, she passed away. So when you use an example of, I just used an example of a patient, that's known as a case study. And so when you talk about the treatment of one patient case, so case studies are stories about actual people to add interest to your paper. Case studies can be used in supporting paragraphs to justify your thesis. For nurses, case studies are the patients they have worked with And for teachers, case studies are students they have worked with. Have you used case studies in your papers? Have you read articles where it makes the article come alive? Because as soon as you have a case study, you're able to apply that and see a face to that, to the topic. So what case studies would you use to talk about your patients of course you don't use the real names. Betty wasn't that person's real name, But what case study topics can you think about? Another kind of writing is research critique. In other words, you read someone else's paper and you write a critique about it. So this is similar to the peer review. That's what you're doing right now. Right now in the Week 5 forum is you're actually doing a research critique. In other words, you're critiquing the strength and the weaknesses of someone's paper. And so in professional world, you can take someone's experiment, you can do their exact experiment, and then you can critique it saying, oh, their results were not valid because when I did the exact same experiment on the exact same group of people, those weren't the results I got, so therefore it's a fluke. Your whole research is a fluke. However, if you do the same experiment, get the same results, you would validate that other person's study, and then you'd be able, that's called a peer-reviewed article, or a peer-reviewed, something that's peer-reviewed means that somebody has peer-reviewed it, validated it, either in a good way or either in a bad way. But in either way, you critique other people's experiments or articles. You would write, is this logical? Is it a fallacy? You could actually take someone's article and say, John's article doesn't make any sense. It lacks a main idea and stuff like that. So any kind of critique, and then you could publish that into somebody else's journal, and that sort of thing. So that is research critique. How do you evaluate a research study? How do you know if a research study is valid or not? So in a research critique, you evaluate a research study based on the following criteria. Sampling. The study must have a large enough sampling to get valid results. For instance, a vaccine study needs to include all populations of all ethnicity to reflect the actual population. If I only sample, say, Asian females, could I then say with a straight face, COVID-19 vaccine or whatever the vaccine you're working on is safe? And so whatever it is that you're working on besides COVID-19 vaccine, anything that you're working on, or if you're going to interview or poll a lot of people on do you like Pepsi or Coca-Cola? So if I only ask my mother and my father, that's not enough people to get a sampling of the actual population. So the more people you sample, the more people you ask, the more accurate your results. So sampling, that's number one. Replicable. The methods of your experiment and the results of your experiment must be replicable in other studies. For instance, if you did a study proclaiming a certain vaccine is safe, then other studies using your methods need to have the same results. So if I say that, oh, the Ebola vaccine, I used it on my patients and they all cured of their Ebola, for instance, right? Then some other doctor used that same vaccine, but nothing happened. Therefore, my results are a fluke. However, if another doctor used the same Ebola vaccine or whatever the vaccine is, and all around the world, different doctors use that same vaccine and it works, everybody is cured, then you know that research study is valid. Okay, so two things, sampling and being replicable. Those are the two ways in which how you evaluate a research study. And you're thinking, me? Evaluate a research study? And I'm like, after 5 years of college, it's gonna be you in the white coat. So, have you ever evaluated a research study? I just know I didn't do that until I was in my 5th year in college, when after I'd learned the basics of linguistics, because that was my major. I was an applied linguistics major, and I remember the very first time I said, I have no idea. and then the teacher said, but then the teacher would prod you along. Did it have a big sampling? And then I would do research to find out the answer. Was it replicable? Did other people, and did other people do the same experiment? Once again, it took me a while to research that to find out the answer to that question. And then when I said yes to both, then the teacher then said, well, Yvonne, what do you think? Was that research study valid? But it took time for me to figure that out, because I had to research all of that, because I was a beginning graduate student. A PhD student would have just known the answer just like that. So so when another kind, and so in order to find out the answer to whether or not something is valid, or whether or not, how do you know something is brand new, you have to do a literature review. Literature review is when you review a whole bunch of articles to find out if something has had a large sampling, or to find out if something's been replicable, or to find out if the paper that you're writing has not already been written by somebody else, so that you want to make sure that your paper is something that's totally original. Well, in order to find that out, you have to read many, many articles. And so that's known as a literature review. And so have you ever done research for a paper? Have you ever helped your child do research for his school paper? If you've answered yes to any of these questions, you have done a literature review. Advocacy writing. So advocacy writing, like I said earlier, that's when you use your voice as a nurse to advocate a cause. When we take a position on an issue, we are advocating for a cause. This is very similar to an argumentative or persuasive essay. So are you for or against whatever the topic is? And so nurses write op-eds, editorials, letters to the editor. They present court testimony using their medical expertise to advocate a cause and have their voices heard. Nurses fight for healthcare causes, health maintenance issues, and lately nurses have written articles begging this was written in 2020, so you could tell that this is a bit dated. Now they're trying to but anyway, so advocacy writing is very, very similar to when you take a position on an issue. So in your Week 9 forum, we are going to take a position on an issue, and then you're going to convince the audience of your point of view. So that's known as advocacy writing. Have you ever taken a position on an important social issue? Have you ever thought about writing how you feel about an important issue? Clinical practice guidelines. So clinical practice guidelines is when a group of experienced nurses create recommendations of patient care. All novice nurses must abide by. So when a professional organization or governmental organization creates guidelines for healthcare, that's known as clinical practice guidelines. And so this is similar to process essay, classification essay, descriptive essay, and expository essay, as you have to tell people how to do something, or how to be a good nurse. Now in my field, it would be teaching practice guidelines. So teaching practice articles and guidelines teach teachers how to have better discipline, class discipline, how to not argue with the student and go to the level of the student, how to have conflict resolution if two students are fighting each other, or how to engage your students so that they become much more interested in your topic rather than falling asleep in class. And so those are some of the topics that would be found in teaching practice guidelines. And so when a group of senior teachers, I belong to TESOL, Teaching English as the Other Language. And so the TESOL has a bunch of guidelines in which they guide us teachers, all the English teachers, ESL teachers around the world, what are the teaching best practices for English as a second language? What are the best practices? Or lately it's been teaching English as a second language during a pandemic. Okay, how do we teach ESL while you're at your computer? when suddenly school is closed. Now what do you do? And a lot of teachers do not have expertise in teaching online. And so during the year of the pandemic, online teachers like me had to help face-to-face teachers transition to online environment. That's an example of a senior teacher helping a junior teacher when you have teaching practice guidelines. So in this case, so in your case with nurses, it's clinical practice guidelines, where a group of experienced nurses will sit down and write out a bunch of rules for everyone to abide by. And then with clinical practice articles, here you have more of a peer-to-peer. Instead of having senior nurses telling junior nurses what to do, in clinical practice articles, this is nurse to nurse. In other words, your coworker will tell you a better way of doing the job simply because she's been at the hospital 2 years and you're just there 1 day, 2 days, and you still finding where exactly is the whatever room, what is this equipment, where do you put such and such an equipment, you know, and stuff like that. In which your hospital, you know where everything is, but in the new hospital, you have to learn. So when you advise other nurses a better way to do something based on your experience, you can actually write an article. You could write an article on, as you find new ways to treat a patient for a certain ailment, you can write best practices article in a professional nursing journal to tell other nurses your improved way to treat a certain ailment. Teachers write best practice articles all the time on topics such as, I mentioned it just a second ago, better ways to motivate your students to learn, how to handle difficult students in the classroom, and how to engage students. And so there are so many nursing, I got a lot of articles. If you want to know what it looks like to write a nursing article, you can go to nursingjournal.org. And that is a website where nurses write for nurses. And so you can see what kind of articles other nurses have already written. And so if you want to write an article for a website, always look to see what the other articles are like. So you get to get familiar with what topics that website is interested in. And so then you can get yourself published and it'll look really good on your resume. Have you ever had a more experienced nurse teach you better guidelines and better way to do your job as you gain more experience? And have you ever taken a leadership role and joined a committee to create a better work environment for nurses at your workplace? Has anyone asked you to serve on a committee to help make guidelines or rules to improve the job? What are some guidelines you have learned to help you perform your job as a nurse better? This is known as evaluative. So here's an example of a clinical practice article sample. 3 ways to better treat dementia patients. I am a nurse and I deal with dementia patients for a living. I have noticed many untrained nurses mistreating or taking advantage of dementia patients. I believe nurses who deal with dementia patients need to improve their patient care. I want to let other nurses know how to improve their patient care. In my nursing practice, I have noticed that the 3 best ways to deal with dementia patients are that one needs to be patient with irritable sundowners, one needs good communication skills, and one needs specialized training and compassion as you deal with lost, scared people who no longer know where they are or what is going on. Conference presentations. Now, if you become a nursing instructor, you would be required to go to at least 2 conferences, depending on your school. The school that I used to work at, the teachers were required to go to, full-time teachers were required to go to 2 conference presentations and present original research. And so at a lot of universities, it's either publish or perish for a lot of university professors. And so conference presentations is when you present your research findings to a professional nursing conference or of nursing peers to talk about ways you can improve your clinical practice or to report the findings of your research study or literature review. When you present at a conference, you will be writing a research proposal. And when you write the proposal, that is when you will use the same essay structure as a science paper. So I will teach you how to write a science paper in, I think it's a week 11 lecture. And it is with this proposal that the conference committee decides if you are good enough to present at their conference. So any kind of proposal, like a business proposal, which I'm going to teach you, I think that's week, I can't remember which week, I think it's week 6. And I think I'll teach you how to do a good business letter, business communication, and a business proposal. And then in the week 11 lecture, I will talk about how you can write a good science paper. And the proposal format is the same for both. And so basically when you write a proposal, it's a problem solution, similar to a problem solution persuasive argumentative essay. Boy, that was a mouthful. But I'll teach you that later. So just know that when you become a nursing teacher or professor, you will be expected to present at a conference. So here is a really short overview of the parts of a research proposal or science paper. You have your abstract, which is a one-paragraph summary of your paper on the very first page of your paper, before the first page. Then you describe, you give a description, background of whatever the problem is. Then the rest of it is going to be, the description, background, all of this describes what the problem is. And from here on end, it's all about the solution. You're going to write about how you conducted your experiment, your literature review is the articles that you read, the results of your study, your conclusion. All of this has to do with the solution. So for example, here you have the problem, COVID-19. Methods include how I conducted my experiment. This is my vaccine. So this whole thing, the rest of it will describe how I administered the vaccine and how I went through the trials and phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, how I had large sampling and all that that's all under methods, where you talk about what you did to make sure your vaccine is safe. Literature review simply is a list of all the articles that you read to prove to the reader that you are knowledgeable in your topic. Then the results would be, okay, so I tested 100 people or gazillion people. They all had such and such side effects, but overall the vaccine is 90% effective, therefore it's safe to use. Okay, so in the conclusion, you would have a discussion and real-world implications in the results. It's 90% effective. Okay, in the conclusion, you conclude, okay, we're going to use the vaccine. It could be used worldwide. It only has minor side effects. And so the conclusion is when you have the real-world implications and also what other research can be done in the future. Further research needs to be done on what the long-term effects of long COVID is going to be. For instance, for this particular topic. So that's how you tell researchers, so if you're reading a research paper, you should read the beginning and the ending, okay? Because then in the ending, that's where the researcher will tell the new researchers, oh, we need to also research this, this, and this. This will give you ideas on what new topics you can write for your paper. This is why you have to do a literature review in order to figure out what's new or what's old. Anyway, this is the same structure I used for my Master's of Arts thesis for my applied linguistics. So in the week 11 lecture, I'll even give you a sampling of my master's thesis. So that's it for conference proposal. So have you ever presented at a professional conference? I've had students who said that they have, and most of them have not. And I'm going to give you a very short lecture on APA. And so in this class, when you write your research papers, APA stands for American Psychological Association. You have two kinds of quotes. You have a direct quote where you cite it word per word. Therefore, you need the author, the date, and the page number. Paraphrase quote is when you summarize the source, and you don't need quotation marks, and you just have the author and the date. And you place these in-text citations inside the body of the paper. Reference citation is at the end of the paper, and it's a list in an alphabetical order where you have the author name, the date, the article name, name of publication, and web address. When do we use APA? We use APA for numbers, dates, percentages, statistics, figures, medical facts, historical facts, or any unknown or uncommon knowledge. Even if you put the source material in your own words, you still need to cite the source in the body of your essay. So here I've had students who just wrote, in 1865, the American Civil War ended. According to who? Okay, who did that research? Where'd you get that information from? 70% of vapors die of lung cancer at an early age. Says who? According to what? So then you need to write Smith, 2022, page 22. Use only one in-text citation per paragraph. So you use pie structure. And so you use P, you take the main point from the thesis statement. I, you take one in-text citation of less than 3 lines. E, explanation of that in-text citation in 5 sentences. So that's pie structure. That would include your entire body paragraph. So remember that for essay 2, you need to have at least one paragraph that follows pie structure. Here's an example of pie structure, paragraph. So here you have P, the P for the main sentence that comes from the thesis statement, main point. Many movie stars and athletes vape each year. People think vaping is safe because if you emit water into the air instead of smoke. So that's the main point, that vaping is not safe. And then you have your one in-text citation. That's I. 70% of people who vape die of lung cancer by the age of 60. And then you're going to write the author, the date, and the page number. That's it. So that's one in-text citation. Then you're going to write 5 sentences, that's E, where you explain in 5 sentences what the meaning of this one in-text citation means. So here I write about, it seems a majority of people die of cancer at a really young age if they start vaping at an early age. Many people do not realize the dangers of vaping because vaping comes in so many flavors like chocolate or strawberry. In fact, vaping is just as dangerous as cigarette smoke since many people die so young before they retire from work. I recommend young people not to start vaping if they want to live a long life. So this pretty much is an example of a pie structure in which I only use one in-text citation. That's it. So finally, I'm going to stop talking. So at the heart of writing, nurse writing, as I wrote in a previous essay, you transform your research into improved care for your patients. And so when you do all the different kinds of writing in nursing, you're going to be using narrative essay, comparative essay, process, classification, definition, description, cause and effect, evaluation. All of these kinds of essays are all going to be used when you write advocacy articles, clinical practice articles, clinical best practices articles, literature reviews, and research critiques. So these kinds of articles are also used in business correspondence, such as emails, memos, and business letters. And so learning how to write effectively will make you look like a really good communicator in the workplace. That's it. And so I got all of this from, this is a really good book you should get. If you want to learn more about writing in nursing, and this is just one short, believe it or not, this is actually a short PowerPoint. They write much more, so if this is a fascinating topic for you, you can look up this book, Beck, Sherrill, Thomas, Long, Writing in Nursing, A Brief Guide. So I hope that you all found this lecture interesting, and that you learn about how what kinds of writing you can do if you pursue an academic career in writing. And so next week, I believe will be week 6. I think I'll be doing business correspondence, I believe. Anyway, so I hope you all do well on your week 5 prep for your week 5 quiz. And if you have any questions about your paper, your essay 1, or your quiz, or your rough draft, you can always email me at yho@fortiscollege.edu. So hope to see you all next week, and I'm going to end it on a bright note. Have a great week.